The fire was everywhere. It swallowed the house I had called home for more than 40 years. The smoke rose so high it looked like the night sky itself was burning. I stood outside barefoot, clutching my chest as the flames licked through the windows, roaring like a beast that could not be tamed. I screamed for help, but my voice was drowned by the crackling sound of wood collapsing. Inside those walls were not just clothes, furniture, or things that could be bought again. Inside were my memories, the photos of my wedding, the letters my husband wrote to me when we were young, the drawings my children made when they were little. Every piece of my life, every reminder of the years I had lived, was turning to ash before my eyes. People gathered around, some shouting, some crying, but I stood frozen, my body weak, my heart heavier than the smoke in the air. I wanted to run inside, to save even one piece of my life, but strong hands held me back. My knees gave way and I fell to the ground, tears streaming down my wrinkled cheeks. As the roof fell in with a thunderous crash, a sharp pain cut through me, not just in my body but in my soul. That fire was not just destroying a house. It was tearing through my memories, my history, my motherhood, my love. But even as everything I had built seemed to vanish in flames, a strange thought burned inside me. This is not the end. The fire that takes away may also leave something behind. Something I must find. And as I lay there, the heat against my face and the cries of neighbors around me, one memory came back stronger than all the rest. It was the beginning of my journey, the moment where everything started, the first spark of a life that would later burn so fiercely. I was only 17 then. When I was 17, I was nothing more than a village girl who dreamed of things too big for her hands to hold. My father was a farmer, strong and stern, and my mother spent her days weaving and humming old songs. I had 2 younger sisters, and I loved them dearly, but my heart wanted more than the life we knew. I wanted to learn. I wanted to travel. I wanted to love someone deeply, someone who would make the stars brighter at night. But life in those days was not about what a girl wanted. It was about what the family decided. And when I was 17, my family decided I was ready for marriage. I remember the day he came. His name was William. He was tall, with eyes that carried both kindness and secrets. He was not from our village. He had traveled from a town far away, looking for a wife. He came with his mother, and the way they looked at me, I felt my heart pounding in my chest. At first, I resisted. How could I, a girl with so many dreams, suddenly become a wife? But there was something about William's smile that softened me. He spoke gently, and when he said, "I will take care of you," I believed him. Our wedding was small but beautiful. There was dancing, laughter, and even though I was nervous, I felt a strange warmth in my heart. Perhaps this was the beginning of the more I was searching for. But life, as I would come to learn, has its highs and its lows. And the lows came quicker than I ever expected. The first years of marriage were not easy. William worked long hours and sometimes we had little food on the table. I was young, unprepared for the weight of being a wife, and soon after, a mother. At 18 I gave birth to my first child. I was terrified, crying through the night. But when I held that little baby in my arms, I felt a fire in me ignite. It was not the kind that destroys. It was the kind that gives life, the kind that warms even the coldest nights. Motherhood gave me strength. It gave me purpose. Each child I held in my arms felt like a new chapter of love being written in my heart. I had 4 children in all, and though the nights were long and the struggles many, they became the reason I kept fighting. But happiness never stays still. Just as I began to build a life filled with laughter and love, the storms came. William began to change. His smile grew weaker, his health poorer. He would cough through the nights, his body shaking, but he refused to go to the doctor. I begged him, but he only shook his head saying, "I am strong. I'll be fine." I did not know then how quickly life could slip away. One morning, before the sun had even risen, I woke to find William cold beside me. His eyes closed, his breath gone. The man who had promised to take care of me, the man whose smile had once made me believe in love, was gone. I was only 28. A widow. A mother of 4. A woman with no idea how to keep the fire inside her from going out. But I had no choice. I could not break. My children needed me. So I stood up, even when my knees shook. I worked, I cooked, I prayed. Every day felt like a battle. But slowly, I learned that grief does not end. It only becomes part of who you are. Years passed, and though the weight never left me, I found ways to smile again. My children grew, each with their own dreams, their own battles, their own fire. They gave me hope. They gave me life. And then the day of the fire came. I had rebuilt my life piece by piece, filling that old house with memories, with laughter, with the sound of grandchildren running through the halls. That house was more than bricks and wood. It was the heart of my journey. And yet one night, as I sat in my chair, tired but grateful, the flames came. A single spark, they said, maybe from the kitchen. I remember the smell of smoke, the screams, the rush to get everyone out. I remember standing outside, watching everything I had built turn to ashes. But I also remember one thing most clearly. As I stood there in the fire's cruel light, my youngest grandchild tugged my dress and said, "Grandma, we're safe. You're safe." And that was when I realized the truth. The fire had not taken everything. It had not taken the love inside me. It had not taken my children or my grandchildren. The fire that mattered. The fire in my soul. The fire of love, of motherhood, of resilience. That fire had never faded. Still, as I stood there that night, watching my home fall into ruin, I did not know the next trial waiting for me. Because sometimes the hardest storms are the ones that come when you think you have already survived it all. That storm was about to begin. The morning after the fire was colder than any winter I had ever known. Even though it was not winter at all. The house was gone. The smoke still floated in the air, heavy and sharp, clinging to my clothes and hair. Ashes covered the ground where once my children had played, where once I had cooked, laughed, prayed, and cried. All that remained was blackness. Charred wood, broken metal, pieces of what once held my story. I sat on a wooden bench at the edge of the street, wrapped in an old shawl someone had thrown around my shoulders the night before. Neighbors walked by, some shaking their heads in pity, some whispering words of comfort. But none of it filled the emptiness inside me. It felt like I had been buried alive, my soul crushed beneath the rubble that was once my home. Then I felt a hand slip into mine. It was Anna, my first daughter, the one who had always carried strength in her eyes. She knelt beside me, her voice trembling but firm. "Mother, we will build again. Don't lose yourself. We still have each other." Her words should have been enough to comfort me. And yet, I could not stop my tears. Because I knew something she did not. Something I had kept hidden all these years. The fire had not only taken memories, it had also revealed a secret that I had prayed would stay buried forever. As I watched the smoke curl into the sky, that old memory returned, sharper and heavier than the flames I had just witnessed. It was the year after William died. I was still young, only 29, with 4 children to feed and no man to lean on. Life was harder than I can put into words. Every day felt like drowning in an ocean with no shore in sight. People whispered about me in the village. The poor widow, the woman left alone, the one who will never survive. And for a time I believed them. Until I met Richard. Richard was not like William. He was bold, strong, and careless with his words, but he had a way of making me laugh when I thought laughter had abandoned me. He came often to help with the farm, claiming he wanted to lighten my burden. Slowly, his visits grew more frequent, and his presence more dangerous. I knew what the village would say. I knew the shame that would fall on me if people discovered I had let another man close to me so soon after William's death. But grief is a powerful thing, and loneliness is even stronger. One night, after a long day of work, Richard stayed behind. The children were asleep, the house was quiet, and I felt a warmth in my heart I had not felt in years. That night, I let myself forget the pain. I let myself feel alive again. But choices have consequences. And mine came in the form of a child. Months later, when I gave birth to my 5th child, whispers began to stir in the village. Some said the baby looked different, that she did not carry William's features. My heart pounded every time someone stared too long, every time someone asked too many questions. I raised her with the same love I gave the others, but deep down, I knew the truth, that she carried a secret no one could ever know. For years, I buried that truth deep inside me. I smiled when people asked, I prayed when guilt tore at me, and I swore I would take the secret to my grave. But now, as I sat outside my burned house, Watching the smoke rise into the sky, I realized something terrifying. The fire had destroyed the house, yes. But it had also destroyed the box where I kept the letters. The letters Richard wrote to me when no one else knew. If anyone found them among the ashes, the secret would no longer be mine alone. And just as the thought hit me, I saw someone across the street bending down, picking something from the rubble. It was Michael, my only son. In his hand was a half-burned envelope. My blood ran cold. The day dragged on, heavy and endless. My children tried to comfort me, the neighbors brought food, and people promised to help rebuild. But all I could think of was that letter. That single piece of paper that carried the fire of a past I had hidden for so long. As the sun began to set, Michael walked toward me. He had been quiet all day, his eyes fixed on the letter in his pocket. When he finally stopped in front of me, he pulled it out, his hands shaking. "Mother," he said, his voice low, almost broken. "What is this?" The paper was blackened at the edges, but the words were still there. Words from Richard. Words of love. Words that had no place in my life as William's widow. I tried to speak, but the words stuck in my throat. My children gathered around, their faces pale, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Mother," Michael said again, this time louder, his voice cracking. "Tell me the truth. Who was Richard?" The fire had taken my home. But now it threatened to take something even greater, my children's trust. And in that moment, with their eyes burning into mine, I realized there was no way to escape. The fire that never faded was not only the one that burned down my house. It was also the fire of my choices, the fire of a secret I had carried for decades. And now that fire had returned to consume me again. Silence. That was all there was in that moment after Michael's question. The kind of silence that could break a heart in two. My children stood around me, waiting, their faces filled with fear, anger, and confusion. The fire had already taken my house. But the ashes had given them something far more dangerous: doubt. I looked at Michael's trembling hands, holding that half-burnt letter as if it were a weapon. His eyes, so much like William's, pierced through me. The others, Anna, Grace, and little Sarah, stared at me, searching for answers. They wanted me to deny it, to shake my head and say it was nothing. But my lips felt heavy, my voice trapped. "Mother," Anna said softly, her voice cracking. "Please, say something." My heart pounded in my chest. I wanted to protect them. I wanted to protect myself. For years, I had buried the truth so deep, believing it was the only way to keep my family together. But the fire had forced the truth into the light, and there was no going back. My voice quivered. My hands trembled as I reached for Michael's arm. "I will tell you. But not here. Not like this." Michael pulled back, his jaw tight, his face dark with suspicion. "Then when? Because I've lived my whole life believing one thing, and now this paper tells me you've been hiding something. Were you lying to us, Mother?" His words stabbed me deeper than any blade. My knees weakened and I sank onto the bench, covering my face with my palms. Tears escaped before I could stop them. The neighbors were still lingering nearby, some pretending not to watch, others whispering behind their hands. I could not let the world hear the truth before my children did. "Please," I whispered, my voice low and shaky. "Tonight, when it is just us, I will tell you everything." The silence stretched longer. Finally, Anna nodded. "Then tonight." The day passed in slow misery. People came with food and blankets, but I could barely eat. My mind was racing, my stomach in knots. Every laugh from a child nearby felt like an echo of the life I once had. The life I might lose if my children could not forgive me. As the sun dipped and the stars began to scatter across the sky, I sat with my children in what little shelter we had. An old shed a neighbor had offered until we could find a proper place to stay. The fire's smell still clung to my skin, reminding me of what had been lost. But tonight I was about to lose even more. They sat in a circle around me, their faces lit faintly by the glow of a single lantern. Michael still clutched the letter. His eyes had not softened all day. Grace and Sarah huddled close together, whispering every now and then, while Anna kept her gaze steady on me, as though she were preparing herself to hold the family together, no matter what I said. I took a deep breath. My chest hurt from the weight of the truth pressing down on me. "When your father died," I began, my voice breaking, I was young. Too young. I had 4 of you to care for, and no one to help me. Every day felt like drowning. I prayed for strength, but I also longed for someone to ease the pain. Grace leaned forward, her eyes wide. And that's when you met Richard? I closed my eyes for a moment, nodding slowly. Yes. He helped me with the farm. He made me laugh when I thought I never could again. But it was wrong. I knew it was wrong. And yet, I was weak. Michael's face darkened, his grip on the letter tightening. Weak. Or selfish. His words cut me, but I forced myself to continue. I never wanted to replace your father. I never wanted to hurt you. But one night, I let myself fall into a mistake. A mistake that gave me Sarah. At that, the room seemed to freeze. All eyes turned to Sarah, the youngest, the one who had always been gentle and sweet, the one who looked the least like William. Her lips parted in shock, her body trembling. Me, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Tears streamed down my face as I reached for her hand. Yes, my child. You are not William's daughter. You are Richard's. But you are mine. And I have loved you no differently from the others. Not for one moment. Sarah's hand slipped from mine. She stared at me with wide, tearful eyes, then at her siblings. Grace gasped and covered her mouth. Anna's face remained unreadable, and Michael shook his head, rage burning in his eyes. So all these years, Michael said bitterly, we lived a lie. Father died. And while we mourned him, you were with another man? And Sarah, his voice broke, his chest heaving. She doesn't even belong to us? She belongs to me. I cried, my voice rising in desperation. She belongs to all of you. She is your sister, your blood and spirit if not in name. I never stopped being your mother. I carried you all through storms you'll never understand. I did what I thought I had to do to survive. But my words felt small against the storm in their hearts. Sarah burst into tears and ran from the shed, her small figure vanishing into the night. Grace rushed after her, calling her name. Anna stayed still, her eyes filled with a strange mix of sorrow and strength. Michael stood, his fists clenched, his voice shaking with fury. You destroyed us. The fire didn't need to burn our house, because you've burned this family yourself. And with that, he stormed out into the night, leaving me trembling, broken, and drowning in the weight of my own choices. I was left with Anna, who placed her hand on mine. Mother, you've carried this alone for too long. But now we all carry it. Her voice was calm, but her eyes glistened with unshed tears. And in that moment, I realized the truth. The fire that never faded was not just in my heart. It was now in theirs too. But what none of us knew was that this secret was only the beginning. For the past, once revealed, has a way of bringing storms we are never ready for. And mine was coming faster than I could bear. The night after the truth spilled was one of the longest nights of my life. I did not sleep. I sat on that hard wooden bench outside the shed, watching the stars blink weakly above, feeling as though they mocked me with their quiet peace. Inside, my children slept restlessly, or at least pretended to. I could hear Grace whispering to Sarah, her voice low and urgent, while Anna hummed softly as if trying to soothe them both. Michael, however, did not return until the early hours of morning. When he finally walked back in, his steps were heavy, his jaw set, his eyes swollen as if he had cried in the dark where no one could see. He did not speak to me. He lay down on the floor, his back turned. That silence was worse than his anger. By dawn, the house we had lost had grown cold ashes. But the family we once were now stood on the edge of crumbling too. The next day, the whispers began. Villagers passed by, shaking their heads, their voices carrying words I had dreaded all my life. Did you hear? The fire revealed more than smoke. They say the widow's youngest isn't William's child. Imagine hiding such a thing all these years. Their words sliced through me like knives. Gossip is a fire of its own. It spreads fast, burns deeper than flames, and leaves scars no one can see. Everywhere I turned, eyes followed me, judging, mocking, pitying. Anna walked beside me, her chin high, her arm firm in mine, but I could feel her trembling. Grace clung to Sarah protectively, glaring at anyone who dared whisper too loudly. Michael, however, refused to walk with us. He stayed behind, his face like stone, avoiding me whenever he could. By afternoon a visitor came. It was Richard. He appeared at the edge of the farm path, his clothes dusty, his hair grayer than I remembered. The years had not been kind to him, but his eyes. They were the same eyes that once made me feel seen when I was drowning in grief. When I saw him, my chest tightened. Memories of that mistake, that secret, flooded back like a river breaking its banks. And now the river had reached my doorstep. "Eleanor," he said softly, his voice carrying a strange mix of regret and longing. "I heard about the fire. I came as soon as I could." My children froze. Anna's grip on my arm tightened. Grace's mouth fell open. Sarah's eyes widened with confusion, and Michael's face turned red with fury. "You," Michael spat, stepping forward. "You're Richard." Richard's shoulders sagged. His hands raised as if in surrender. "I never meant to cause pain. I only came to help." "Help?" Michael's voice thundered. "You ruined us. You ruined my father's memory. You ruined her. And now you dare show your face here." The villagers who had gathered nearby leaned closer, hungry for the drama unfolding. I wanted to scream at them to leave, to stop feeding on my misery, but my throat was too tight. Richard's gaze flicked to Sarah then, and something unspoken passed between them. A recognition. A connection. Sarah's lip trembled, her small frame shaking. "Is it true?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Are you my father?" The world seemed to still. My breath caught, Anna's eyes widened, Grace gasped, and Michael let out a furious growl. Richard's lips parted, his eyes soft. "Yes, child. I am your father." Sarah stumbled back as if the ground beneath her had cracked open. She turned to me, her face pale, her eyes swimming with betrayal. "You lied to me. All my life you lied." Tears burned my eyes as I reached for her. "I lied to protect you. To protect all of us. I did not want you to bear the weight of my mistake." But she shook her head violently, pushing me away. "No, Mother. You didn't do it for me. You did it for yourself." Her words crushed me more than the fire, more than the whispers, more than the ashes of the home I had lost. And then, before I could stop him, Michael lunged forward and grabbed Richard by the collar. "You don't belong here." Michael roared, his fist raised. "You don't belong to us." "Michael, stop." Anna screamed, rushing forward. Grace cried out, clutching Sarah to her chest. But Michael's fist came down hard, and Richard staggered backward, blood trickling from his lip. The crowd gasped. Some shouted for Michael to stop, others egged him on. The chaos swelled like a storm, voices rising, bodies moving closer. And in that storm, I realized something terrifying. This was not just about Richard anymore. It was about my children. About the fire that had been passed to them. The fire that never faded. And as Michael raised his fist again, ready to strike once more, I screamed, "Michael, if you hit him again, you will destroy this family forever." The air froze. Michael's arm hung in the air, trembling, his chest heaving, his eyes burning with fury and pain. Richard stood bloodied, his gaze locked on me. Sarah wept in Grace's arms. Anna stood between them all, her face pale but determined. And in that moment, I knew the next chapter of my life was no longer mine alone. It was in the hands of my children. Michael's arm lowered slowly, but the fire in his eyes did not. His chest rose and fell like a man standing on the edge of war. For a moment, I thought he might still strike Richard again, but then he pushed him back roughly and turned away, fists clenched at his sides. The villagers began to murmur louder. Some shook their heads, some gasped, others whispered words that carried like knives. The widow's shame is now in the open. Her son nearly killed the man. What will become of that family now? Every whisper stung. Every glance felt like a branding iron on my skin. My children stood frozen, torn between anger, sorrow, and fear. I wanted to gather them all into my arms, to shield them from the world, from the stairs, from the fire that had started long before the flames consumed our home. But I could not, because I was the one who lit that fire with my choices. Richard wiped the blood from his lip, his gaze flicking from me to Sarah. His eyes softened, though his voice carried the weight of regret. "Eleanor," he said, almost pleading, "I did not come here to hurt anyone. I only wanted to help after the fire. But maybe it's time the truth lives in the open." Secrets destroy more than flames ever could. Enough, Michael barked, his voice harsh. He stepped in front of Sarah, shielding her from Richard's gaze. You will not come near her. You will not come near us. Leave before I forget myself. Richard looked at me then, as if searching for permission to stay, to speak, to explain. But my lips trembled, my throat too tight for words. I could not even bring myself to nod or shake my head. I was caught between two fires, my son's fury and Richard's remorse. Finally, Richard dropped his gaze, shoulders slumping. Very well, he whispered. I will go. But remember this, Eleanor, truth may burn, but lies will choke you. With that, he turned and walked down the dusty road, his shadow stretching long in the fading light. That night, the shed was filled with silence so heavy it felt like another wall pressing down on us. No one spoke during dinner. Grace pushed her food around her plate. Sarah ate nothing at all, her eyes red from crying. Anna moved like a ghost, keeping busy, tending to everyone but herself. Michael sat in the corner, staring at the wall, his jaw tight, his anger unspoken but loud enough to fill the room. I sat at the table, my hands folded tightly in my lap. My heart ached with every breath, but I knew I had to speak. My children, I said softly, my voice trembling. I know I have broken your trust. I know my choices have hurt you. But believe me when I say this. Everything I did because I wanted to survive. Because I wanted you to survive. Michael scoffed, shaking his head. Don't make excuses, Mother. You dishonored Father. You lied to us. You lied to Sarah. You lied to yourself. Michael. Anna tried to interrupt, but he raised his hand sharply. No, Anna. Let her hear it. She needs to understand what she's done. His voice cracked then, raw and trembling. Do you know what it feels like, Mother? To grow up thinking your family was whole, only to learn it was built on lies? Father deserved better. We deserved better. Tears blurred my vision. You are right, my son. I will not fight your anger. But know this. I have carried this burden alone for many years, and it nearly destroyed me. If I could change the past, I would. But I cannot. All I can do is beg for your forgiveness and pray you will not let this secret tear us apart. The room was still. Grace reached across the table and took Sarah's hand gently. She is still our sister, she whispered, her voice shaky. No matter what, that does not change. Sarah looked at her through tear-filled eyes. But I don't belong. I never belonged. All this time, I was different and I didn't even know why. Now I do. You belong with us, Grace insisted, squeezing her hand. Blood may make families, but love keeps them together. Anna nodded, her eyes firm. Grace is right. We cannot let this truth destroy us. We have already lost our home. If we lose each other too, then we lose everything. Her words were a balm on my aching heart, but Michael's silence was louder than any comfort. He stood abruptly, pushing his chair back with such force it scraped loudly against the floor. I need air, he muttered and walked out into the night. The door creaked shut behind him, leaving us all in uneasy quiet. Hours later, when the night had deepened and the crickets sang their lonely song, Anna came to sit beside me. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. Mother, she whispered. There is more, isn't there? More you haven't told us. Her words sent a chill through me. My lips parted, but no sound came. She studied me carefully, then sighed. You don't have to say it now, but I can feel it. And if there is more, we need to know, because secrets have already burned too much. She left me then, curling beside Grace and Sarah to sleep. I remained awake, staring into the darkness, my heart pounding, because Anna was right. There was more than the children could bear. And as I wrestled with the weight of it, the door creaked open again. Michael stepped inside, his eyes dark, his face grim. He walked past me without a word, sat heavily on his mat, and closed his eyes. But I noticed something in his hand, a folded piece of paper. And when he thought no one was looking, he opened it just enough for me to see a name scrawled across the top in faded ink. Richard. My blood froze. The fire may have destroyed my house, but it had not destroyed all of the letters. And now, in Michael's hands, another piece of my past was alive, with the smell of old smoke and the weight of unspoken words. I had not slept. My body was weary, but my mind refused to rest. All through the night, I had replayed the look in Michael's eyes, the paper clenched in his hands, the name burned into my soul, Richard. When the sun's first light streamed through the cracks of the shed, I sat quietly, waiting for the storm I knew was coming. My children stirred one by one, stretching, yawning, moving with the heaviness of sorrow that had become our daily companion. But Michael did not stir like the rest. He rose quickly, his movements sharp, his eyes already hard with purpose. I saw him tuck the folded paper into his coat pocket before stepping outside. I wanted to call him back, to stop him, to tell him there were things about Richard, about myself, that he could never understand unless he heard them from my own lips. But fear glued my tongue. I remained silent. By mid-morning, Michael had not returned. The others grew restless. Grace tried to distract Sarah with small talk, though both their eyes remained red from crying. Anna busied herself with sweeping the shed floor, her motions tight and angry, as if she could sweep away the shame clinging to our family. Finally, I could bear it no longer. I stood. "Anna," I said softly, "watch over your sisters. I must go find your brother." She looked up at me, suspicion flickering in her eyes. "Is it about the paper he found?" My breath caught, but I nodded. Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she said nothing, only glanced at Sarah and Grace before turning back to her sweeping. I found Michael at the edge of the burned house. He stood among the ashes, the folded paper open in his hands, his eyes scanning the charred words as if he could wrestle the truth from them. "Michael," I whispered, stepping closer. He did not turn. His voice was low, dangerous. "How many letters, Mother?" The question pierced me. "Michael, how many?" he barked, spinning to face me. His eyes blazed, his voice rising. "How many lies have you hidden in this ash? How many times did he write to you? How many times did you answer?" Tears welled in my eyes. "Too many," I whispered. Michael's hand shook as he held up the paper. This one says he wanted to take you away, to marry you, to raise Sarah as his own." I closed my eyes, pain slicing through me. "Yes," he asked me, but I refused. "Why?" Michael's voice cracked, a tear escaping despite his anger. "Why didn't you go with him if you loved him so much?" "I did not love him more than I loved you," I cried, stepping closer. "I stayed because of you, because of Anna, Grace, Sarah, because this family was my heart, even if it was broken. I could not leave you behind." Michael stared at me, breathing hard, his chest heaving with fury and grief. "You think that makes it better?" he spat. "You betrayed Father. And now you want me to believe it was for us? No, Mother. No. You don't get to twist it into love." His words shattered me. I reached for him, but he stepped back, shaking his head. "I can't look at you," he whispered. "Not right now. Maybe not ever." He turned and walked away, leaving me standing in the ashes of the life I had built, my tears falling onto the ground where laughter once lived. That evening, when Michael did not return for supper, the girls grew anxious. Grace prayed aloud, her small hands folded tightly. Sarah sat in silence, her face pale, her eyes hollow. Anna, ever the strong one, tried to hold us together, but even her voice trembled as she spoke. "Mother, where did he go?" "I don't know," I whispered, though fear gnawed at my heart. The hours stretched. Darkness fell. Still no sign of Michael. Then, just as the moon climbed high, the door to the shed creaked open. Michael stumbled in. But he was not alone. 2 men followed behind him, their faces grim, their eyes cold. One of them carried a lantern, the other a paper folded neatly in his hand. My stomach twisted. I knew those men. They were elders of the village. "Eleanor," the taller one said, his voice deep and stern, "we need to speak with you." The children froze. Grace clung to Sarah. Anna stepped forward protectively, and Michael stood off to the side, his face shadowed, his jaw set. The elder held out the folded paper. "We found this among the ashes. Michael brought it to us. The truth has spread too far to hide now. You must answer for it." My heart dropped. My knees trembled. The walls seemed to close in. It was no longer just my family. Now the entire village demanded the truth. Their faces were carved from stone, their eyes sharp, their presence heavy enough to silence even the crickets outside. Anna moved closer to me, her arm brushing mine, while Grace and Sarah pressed against each other in fear. Michael stood apart, his arms crossed tightly, his face stiff with anger and something else I could not name. The elder with the lantern cleared his throat. "Eleanor," he began, his tone formal, almost accusing. "The fire has uncovered not only your home but also the secrets you buried. The village is unsettled. They demand answers." The other elder, the one holding the folded paper, raised it high. "This letter written by Richard speaks of love, of promises, of things that should never have been. Is it true?" My throat tightened. I could feel the weight of my children's eyes on me, the unspoken plea for me to deny it, to undo the shame that had begun to crush us. But lies had carried me this far, and lies had burned us down. I lowered my head. "It is true." Gasps echoed through the room. Sarah flinched as though struck. Grace clutched her hand tighter, whispering something to soothe her. Anna's jaw clenched, but she did not look away. Michael's eyes closed, his shoulders sagging with the bitter confirmation of what he already knew. The elder with the lantern stepped closer. "Do you understand what this means? Your husband, William, was a respected man. The village honored his memory. And yet, while the world mourned him, you let another man into your bed." Shame burned through me, hotter than any fire. Tears welled in my eyes, but I forced myself to meet their gaze. I was young. I was broken. I made a mistake, one I have carried all my life. But do not judge me without knowing the burden I bore. The elder holding the letter sneered. "Burden? You speak of burden, yet what of the burden you place on us? Secrets poison a village. Already there is talk of removing your family from this community. For shame spreads like smoke." Anna stepped forward then, her voice firm though her hands trembled. "No. You will not speak to my mother this way. Whatever mistake she made, it was hers, not ours. Do not punish us for a past we did not choose." Her courage surprised even me. For a moment the elders faltered, their stern expressions softening at her boldness. But then Michael's voice cut through the silence. "Maybe they're right." All eyes turned to him. He stood in the shadows, his arms folded, his face hard. "Maybe we don't belong here anymore. Maybe Mother's choices have cursed us. Look at Sarah. She isn't even Father's child. What place does she have among us? What place do any of us have among people who now see us as liars?" Sarah whimpered softly, burying her face in Grace's shoulder. My heart shattered anew. "Michael!" Anna snapped, fury flashing in her eyes. "Don't you dare speak of Sarah like that. She is our sister." "She's Richard's daughter," Michael spat, his voice sharp as a blade. "And Richard nearly tore this family apart. Why should we keep pretending everything is fine?" The room erupted into chaos. Anna yelling, Grace crying, Sarah trembling, the elders muttering among themselves. And through it all, Michael's words cut deeper than any judgment from the village. Finally, the elder with the lantern raised his hand. "Enough! This family is fractured, and the village cannot hold what is breaking from within. Eleanor, you must make a choice. Either stand before the community tomorrow and confess everything, or leave this village and carry your shame with you." The words struck like thunder. My breath caught, my chest tightened, and my knees nearly gave way. Confess everything? Stand before the very people who had raised me, who had fed me, who had watched me grow, and bear my sins for them to trample? Or leave the only home I had ever known, taking my children into a world that would not welcome us? There was no good choice. Only fire on both sides. The elders left, their steps heavy, their faces grim. Silence filled the shed once more. But it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of storms gathering. Anna turned to me, her voice urgent. "Mother, what will you do?" Grace's eyes were wide with fear. "We can't leave. This is our home." Sarah's whisper cut through them all. "If we stay, everyone will hate me." Michael's voice was cold. "Then maybe leaving is better." I looked at each of them, my children, my heart, my fire, and I knew the decision would change everything. Tomorrow would decide not just my fate, but theirs. And as I lay down that night, staring at the dark ceiling of the shed, I prayed for strength. Because the fire had never faded, and now it threatened to consume not just me, but everything I loved. And in the depths of that night, As the world slept, I heard footsteps outside the shed. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Then a knock at the door. The knock on the shed door that night was the last spark that pushed everything to its breaking point. The elders came back, the village gathered, and I stood before them, trembling but unyielding. I told the truth, about William, about Richard, about my mistakes, and about my love for my children. Every word felt like tearing open an old wound, but it also felt like breathing for the first time. Some in the village turned their faces away. Others whispered. A few spat at the ground in anger. But there were also eyes that softened, people who nodded quietly, as if to say they too had fires they never spoke of. The road ahead was not easy. My children bore scars of shame and betrayal, and some wounds among us took years to heal. Michael left for a time, needing space from the weight of our family's truth, but he returned when he realized that running could not quench his fire either. Anna became my shield, standing firm beside me no matter the whispers. Grace learned forgiveness early, carrying Sarah through every storm. And Sarah, though marked by a truth she never asked for, grew into the gentlest soul of us all, because she knew what it meant to be loved even in the shadow of doubt. The fire that burned our house down was not the first fire in my life, nor the last. But it taught me something no silence, no secret ever could. Fire does not only destroy, fire also purifies. It burns away the lies, the masks, the pretenses, until only truth remains. Yes, I was a wife who stumbled, a mother who lied, a woman who made mistakes that could have broken us all. But I was also the woman who stayed, who fought, who carried her children through the ashes. The fire never faded, because it was never meant to. It lived on, not as destruction, but as a reminder. Love is not flawless, family is not perfect, and the truth, no matter how painful, is the only thing strong enough to survive the flames. If you learn anything from my story, let it be this. Fire, do not hide your fire, even if it burns. Let it light the truth. Fire, do not run from the ashes of your past. Let them teach you. Fire, do not fear the storms of life. They may scar you, but they will also shape you. For in the end, it is not the fire that destroys us. It is the fire we refuse to face. And I, Eleanor, faced mine. The fire that never faded became the light that carried me through motherhood and